Hey, good evening. Well, it's that time of the evening when the light is just about failing, which actually always used to be my favourite time on the mountain when we were living there, because there's a certain kind of, I don't know, magical feeling when the light is in the mountains, when the light is done, uh, when the sun has gone down. It's gone down, but what it does is it in the mountains it lights the sky up, and you live in this reflected light, which is just magical. And I used to sit out and look over the rice fields down by Lena's house, and it did feel very special. But here it's special, but in a different kind of way. We're looking out. I'm actually sitting on what we worked out was going to be like a coffee bar, um, but it would double as a stage. I'll just pan the camera around and let you see. So this would be looking out onto the audience, and as you can see, the light is actually beginning to fade. But if we come around, that's the resort. That's the inn part of our inland resort project. I call it our 5-year dream project. That's where all of the balconies would be. That's the back of the building. Out there is the front, and behind our truck you can see the gate. So the gate, and then if you come around again, we're looking right out onto the stage now, which is where I'm sitting. And then that's our home, and that's our little, well, my little, although Beth has started to exercise, that's my little exercise area. So coming back, so we don't get a spectacular sunrise, sunset I should say, but we do get to see the moon come up. I'm getting everything mixed up there, aren't I? Can you see the moon there? Not sure whether you can. But anyway, the moon comes up. You should be able to see the moon there in a very nice blue sky. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about was the fact that a friend, Joe, said that he thought that we were struggling. Well, one of the things that people don't seem to realize is that Beth and I, as people, as a couple, are separate. We are separate entities to the charity, which is Terence Beth Martin Giving Hope, and that is a separate government registered charity and quite separate from us. So when we are struggling to meet our commitments, which mainly nowadays is our commitment to our students, and pretty well we're on watch now, that we give our allowances when we can. We're struggling in that way. We're struggling because some of the fees are very high. For instance, nursing fee. This surprised me, but a nursing fee in the Philippines is pretty high because the course is study intensive. It's to do, which makes sense, it's to do with people's health. So the fees, and I'm only guessing here because I'm not involved in this side of what we do in our charity, but they're around, I think, around 25 to 30,000 pesos. So it is a struggle finding that twice a year, and we have just, fortunately in a way, we have just one student. That's Mia, and Mia has maybe one more year to go before she graduates, and then of course she will be a much sought after person for employment. So I wanted to make that clear, that when we are struggling personally and when the charity is struggling personally, it's quite different. Our struggles have been misinterpreted and misunderstood and unappreciated in a way, because the project that we decided was right for us, which made sense to us, didn't make sense to a lot of other people. Now, I'm getting on in years, and soon enough we'll have my 85th birthday, and people, when they have their own interpretation, they have their own view of what being in retirement should be. I was never in retirement. It's a concept that doesn't make sense to me. You retire from being an employee. That's what people retire from. And for many, many years I have not been employable. So even as a musician, I was always free to walk, and sometimes did. So people, I've often talked about this, how people don't just have their own comfort zone. Like, everybody talks about that, don't they? Yes, well, yeah, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, haven't you? But a comfort zone is something that people place you in. So when you say you're this or that, or you're this age or that age, or this colour or that colour, or this job or that job, people people put you in a place which they feel comfortable to have you in. Yes, well, yes, that's Terence, and he does some charity work, and he helps with this and that, and that's where they have you placed. And you won't be tired if you step out of that comfort zone. Well, wait a minute, you're supposed to be retired. Why aren't you enjoying yourself? It seems a difficult concept for people to have, but actually we lead a wonderful life. Beth and I are not a perfect couple. Beth and I have to work at being as perfect as we can, and sometimes it's not always perfect, but we work through those times and we get it back to what is perfect enough for us. So the idea of us struggling, Joe, is not really what you might think. We are struggling because we choose, not always logically, we choose to have some work done on this thing behind me, and if it means that we're eating sardines and rice, or pork on the bone, which is our popular poor man's meat at the moment, it means that we've done it by choice. Now recently we got caught in what is surely a Filipino dilemma. When I've talked before about this, it still puzzles me even now, is that when you embark on a building, it has to be correct. But there's a certain way that a contractor will approach it in America or in the UK. In other words, you submit plans, say, this is for a new house. You submit plans and the plans are approved. In other words, it's not to this or to that for the area. In other words, you can't put a canning factory into a posh supervision. So you can't do that. So you have code, and when you do things, you must do it according to the code for the area. So there's all kinds of requirements that you have to meet, and before you get your permit, you have to assure them that everything on the plans meets those requirements. Then you get a permit, and then you start work. Well, strangely here, we've had to do a lot of work before the permit, a certain permit for a certain point in the work is approved. And at the moment we're in the process of doing that. We've had, like, the fire department came down and they wanted to see, as it's going to be a public building, in a way, open to the public, shall we say, we've had to have a fire alarm fitted, right? So they say, well, as soon as you have the fire alarm fitted, and that means you have to have the electrics done, because otherwise it all gets rather pointless and messy. So as soon as you've had that done, let us know, we'll come down and inspect, and then that's all that's needed for the next part of your permit to be done. Well, you could say, well, why don't you just wait until you have the money and you can sit back and not be struggling? But things have to be done in a certain time, so we have no choice but to go ahead and get work done, and work in every way that we can to find the money to be able to do that, because if we don't do it within a certain time, then we would have a penalty. We'd have to find the money for that, wouldn't we? So that's what we're doing at the moment, and it is our dream project. So for those of you who say, whatever was in your mind when you decided to do that, you're retired. For those who think that way, you have to remember that this is our dream project. This is our dream to do. We can see this as part of our lives. We can see this as something that we want to do. Someone said, why don't you sell the property to a company who will then employ you to take care of the resort? See, sometimes the education that people receive when they go to school is not to be an entrepreneur, it's to be an employee. And so they think in these terms of, well, if you're struggling, can't you find someone to employ you? Now currently our channel struggles to support 70-something students through their education, and Beth does this miraculous work of finding the heroes who will help her to get these kids through their education. And they are, as I've said many times, they are the heroes, not us. We're just simply those who will gather those who are willing to contribute and help. There's no possible way that Beth and I, on our best day, could support 76 students ourselves, even though we've had to front up on many occasions. So that part of it has to be done, and we separate that from our dream, which is our personal dream, where in the case of the students, we are doing our best to help them to achieve their dreams. So one famous voice in America said, if you want to realize your dreams, help someone else to realize theirs. And so that's what we do. And then there is the question of what our personal dreams are. My personal dream is I can imagine sitting where I am now, when everything is finished and all the landscaping is done, and people are staying quite happily in our inland resort. I can imagine sitting here and having coffee and looking out over this view, which I'm looking out over right now. So it's a funny thing, isn't it, that sometimes when we're so busy realizing our dream, often we have already realized so many parts of that dream. It reminds me of a story that my friend from Australia told me, and he said that the Australian government were going to great lengths to be able to integrate the Aboriginals into the modern way of life. And on this and they had agents that went round and tried to educate the Aboriginals about it. And on one particular occasion, this particular agent had seen an Aboriginal man sitting on the balcony of his humble house, and quite happily smoking a pipe and looking out over the scenery. So we approached him and he said, "Sir, we have many programs which could educate you and prepare you for a better life." The Aboriginal said, "Is that right? So, and what would this program give me?" The Aboriginal wanted to know. Well, the agent said, "We could, perhaps, for instance, we could train you to be, say, a plumber or an electrician." And the Aboriginal said, "And then what would happen?" He said, "Well, then you could go out and you could gain employment, you could work for people and get paid." And said, "And then you could pay some taxes and, be legal. And eventually, as you worked your way through a working life, you would get a retirement. Your retirement would be that you would get a pension, a modest pension, admittedly." And then the Aboriginal said, and then, assuming that I worked all this time as a plumber, which I have no interest in doing, and then I've worked the whole time, what would happen then? He said, "Well, you would have your pension." He said, and what would I do with that? He said, "Well," he said, "your time would be your own. You would be able to sit out here on your balcony in your rocking chair and smoke a pipe." And the Aboriginal said, "Really?" So sometimes we're already realizing our dream. Like I'm out here and I made myself a cup of coffee and I came out here and I looked out over the scenery and I saw the moon up on my right there, and over there I can see the remains of the sunset. I already have my dream. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share this video if it has been of any use to you. Thank you.